Hello, Gordon. Hope all is well with you. This Facebook Live I've called Happy Birthday Arthur Jefferson. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, happy birthday Arthur. You might also be thinking, hang on, who is Arthur Jefferson? Well, reasonable question. Well, Arthur Jefferson was born on this day, which is why I'm calling it Happy Birthday Arthur. Born this day in 1890, so he's dead for a start. Died in 1965, about 18 months before I was born. So, why? Who is he? Why is it relevant to me? Well, although he died about 18 months before I was born, he's had a big influence on the way I see things in life. He really has. So, born on this day, June the 16th, 1890, up in Lancashire in the north of England, here in Britain. And he was born to parents who were doing okay for themselves. His father was a theatre manager and his mother was an actress, and they'd met in the world of theatre. So they moved around a lot, ended up moving to Glasgow, where his father managed a theatre. And Arthur went to school, went through his education, and this bit isn't surprising, ended up leaning towards a theatrical background because that's what he'd got from his parents. But he didn't actually start appearing on stage till he was 16. So he wasn't a child prodigy, or he wasn't someone who didn't have anything else on option. He'd had his education, but he ended up on the stage and started off in music hall, comedy, pantomimes. He was a sort of slapstick variety comedian. And he ended up in one of the big troupes of comedians here in Britain at the time, called Carno's Army, led by Fred Carno, which also included a certain Charles Chaplin. And Arthur Jefferson often understudied for Chaplin. And in fact, when Fred Carno's Army went on a tour to the States, Arthur Jefferson went on the trip, on the tour, as a part-time understudy to Charlie Chaplin. So Charlie Chaplin was slightly above Arthur Jefferson, who by that time was using the name Stan Jefferson, because that was his middle name, Stanley. And when they were in the States doing the tour, Stan, as he was then, started to get more into movies and less to stage, because movies was obviously the great new thing at the time. And he appeared in some very short films, and found that he was good at the writing and the directing side of things. So he wanted to focus on that and less on the acting side for him. And he was working for Hal Roach Studios. And there had been an injury to one of the actors in a film that had an American actor called Oliver Babe Hardy. And Stan Jefferson, although he'd been writing and directing for Hal Roach, was persuaded to step in and do some acting in a few more films. And one of Hal Roach's senior directors realised that there was a bit of a chemistry between Stan Jefferson and Babe Hardy. And a woman that Stan was seeing at the time told Stan, or persuaded Stan, to stop calling himself Stan Jefferson and to pick up the stage name Stan Laurel. And Babe Hardy stopped using Babe and concentrated on Oliver Hardy. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. What happened there? Well, you might have gathered what happened there. They teamed up, they were put together by the Hal Roach organisation as a conscious pairing, as a double act, and went on to be one of the biggest comedy duos and comedy brands ever. Famous all over the world. And when I say it has an influence on me, because I was brought up watching Laurel and Hardy films on the BBC, on television. You don't see them on the BBC nowadays, but you can find pretty much all of them on YouTube. And they always made me laugh. I'm smiling just thinking about them. And what I found in life, and I've only realised later in life that I've always done this, is that I will find myself looking at a situation in life and think, well, what would Stan say? Or what expression would Stan pull on his face? Or what would Ollie say? What expression would Ollie have? What would be the interaction between Stan and Ollie? And then I would use that expression or that movement or something like that in real life. And it just makes me smile. And something that makes you smile in life, well, you could do a lot worse than that, couldn't you? So Stan Laurel really has had a big impact on me and does to this day. Now, I'm talking about this in my Transform Your Life Now group. What's the sort of goal achievement, self-improvement side of it? Well, the point is that Stan went to a foreign country. At the time, it was only supposed to be a tour, but he never came back. Never came back to Britain. They toured in Britain, and it's not as though he had anything against Britain or wasn't allowed to come back. It's just that his life ended up being in the States. But he didn't know that. When he went on the boat for the tour, he didn't know that. He was doing something that meant something to him. He was following his passion. He was making a living doing what he did well. But he didn't know where it was going to end up. Because at that time in variety and in the fledgling movie industry, no one knew how it was going to go, if it was going to take off at all. I mean, a lot of people in the entertainment industry, when movies first started, said, "Oh, that won't last. People won't see that when they can go to a theatre and see it live." So a lot of people poo-pooed films full stop. So when Stan went to America, he didn't know that he was going to not come back and spend his life in America. He didn't know that he was going to get into movies. And when he did get into movies, he thought he was going to be in writing and directing. He didn't know that he was going to meet Oliver Hardy. Had no idea who he was. He then didn't know that they were going to be one of the most famous names in comedy in the world. So he got to the heights of fame, not fortune, because they got stuffed a little bit contract-wise, but the heights of fame. He hadn't set that as a goal. He didn't know that's what's going to happen to him, but he was following his passion. That is the key point for me. Because then whether you reach your goal or not, it's all about the journey, isn't it? It's not just the end result that's going to have the meaning. Because if you say, well, the end result only has meaning, then the journey between where you are and the end result, are you saying that that doesn't have meaning? You've got to have meaning in the present, haven't you? And Stan certainly did that. And although he's not credited with a lot of writing and directing in the Laurel and Hardy movies, everyone knew that what he said went. So if he had an idea for a script change, or if he had an idea for direction, no director was going to say to him, "No, Stan, we're not doing it like that, we're doing it my way." All the directors would say, "Yes, Stan," because they knew that he was the sort of the unwritten, unnamed director in these movies. Not 100%. I'm not being disparaging on the people who were the directors. They weren't just directors in name only. They were directing, because Stan couldn't do it all on his own and didn't want to do it all on his own. But what he said went. So there's Stan Laurel. Happy birthday, Stan. A bit of a nod of the head and a tip of the hat to you, and I might post some links to my favourite Laurel and Hardy videos. So, do you know who Laurel and Hardy was, who Stan Laurel was? Because I was speaking to a young friend of mine, well, I say young, in his mid-20s, and he had no idea who Stan Laurel was. And I was like that. Stan, you don't know who Stan Laurel is? Laurel and Hardy? No. So I got him to Google him on his phone, and there's a classic picture of Stan and Ollie. He said, "No, I still don't know who they are." So do you know who Stan Laurel was? And if so, what's your favourite Laurel and Hardy film, if you can pick one favourite out of all of them. Or maybe your favourite moment in a Laurel and Hardy film. Okay, I hope all is well with you. Signing off for now. Wishing you as ever health and happiness. I'll speak to you again soon.